Hi, I'm Cindy Carey with North Star Longarm Quilting, and I'm here today to show you how to attach borders to your quilt. I'm going to show you the method that I use. I've been using for several years and I'm very happy with. I think you'll find it easy and you'll get great results. To get started, just three things that you'll need to use. One is your measuring tape, another is a fabric marking pencil or pen, and your pins. So what we want to do is get your borders to match the size of your quilt. Sometimes quilters will skip this step and they will do like a strip piecing along the whole length of their quilt. They'll get their borders ready and then they'll just run it down like they're strip piecing. That can cause wavy borders because the feed dogs of your machine will pull the bottom fabric through quicker than the top fabric. So if you do that, you may end up with wavy borders, and that's something that you may not want in your finished quilt. You could get puckers through the quilting process if you have excess fabric in your borders. So I'm going to show you an easy way that will give you nice flat borders so your finished quilt will look wonderful. First thing we need to do is start by measuring your quilt. We're going to take 3 measurements. Let's say this is the top of the quilt. I have my measuring tape and I'm going to measure at the top. And my measurement is 54. And then I'm going to move and find the center of my quilt to take my second measurement. And let's see what this is going across the center. I have 54¼ for my center, and then I'm going to move my quilt down this way so I can get to the bottom of my quilt, and I'm going to take my third measurement here, and my measurement here is 54. So of my 3 measurements, I want to take them and make an average, and that's going to get the borders to fit onto my quilt. And they'll be sized appropriately and they'll lay flat when we're finished. So because I had 2 measurements that were 54 and one that was 54¼ I'm going to cut my borders at 54 so that matches my quilt better. I'm going to use that as my average measurement. And here, let me just slide this down. Here I have my borders that are long enough to cover this side of the quilt. I did have to piece it, and if you can see here, I did use a miter seam when I put my borders together. I recommend these because they are less visible when your quilt is finished. So that's what I like to use. And I'm going to take my border and I'm going to fold it in half like this. And then I'm going to take my measuring tape, and the measurement I'm going to use is 54. I'm going to take the end of my measuring tape and loop it around, take the end of my measuring tape and place it at the 54. So really the end of my tape is on the back side so that I can get it to fold flat, but I'm lining that end of my tape at the 54 marker on my measuring tape. And now this is folded in half just like my border. So I'm going to place the fold of the measuring tape to the fold of the border, and I'm going to get my fabric marking pencil, and on my top border here I'm going to mark 54, and my border is folded in half, but I'm going to leave my tape there and lift up my first piece, and I'm also going to mark 54 on the bottom half. So I have both ends of my border that is marked to the measurement that's going to fit my quilt. I'm also going to take a pin and put that at the center so I know where the center of my border is. Okay. And then I'm going to go to my quilt. I'm going to fold this in half and find my center of my quilt. line up my edges. Follow this out to the center and place a pin. Right there at the center. So now I can open my quilt back up. Get that to lay nice and flat. And here's my border. My quilt is right side up, and my border I'm going to place right side down, so that is having the right sides together. My center pin of my quilt and the center pin of my border, I'm going to line those up, and I'm going to pin them together at the center. Next, I'm going to move to one side, and where I have placed my measurement of 54, I'm going to put that measurement right to the edge of the quilt. And then I'm going to place my pin there to hold the edge in place. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing at the other end of the quilt. I'm going to find the marking on my border, and I'm going to match that up perfectly with the edge of my quilt. And I'm going to place a pin to hold that in place. Now we did take the average measurement, so if your border is not matching perfectly to your quilt, this is where we're going to work that out and ease it in. And I work in halves. I'm going to take the center of the quilt, and let's say this end, I'm going to give it a little jiggle to kind of work things out. If there is anything extra in there, I want it to distribute evenly in this section. And that should be the last time your borders are ever waving. So I'm going to go ahead and place a pin. And then I'm going to, again, this is like half of this half, and I'm going to go in half again between that and my end. And then one more pin here is going to take care of that section. Place my pin here. And now I have this half. I'm going to place a pin in the center of that. And then again, just to get enough pins to fill in that will hold these together nicely while I'm stitching on my machine. Because what I don't want is for those feed dogs to pull more fabric through on the bottom. I want them to stay matched up nice. I have already measured them, and they're going to fit nicely, and they're going to lay nice and flat because I've measured them, and my border is going to fit the size of my quilt. So I'm going in half and half again. This half. And of course I'm matching the edges, the edge of my border to the edge of my quilt as I'm placing these pins as well. Okay. So another thing I'm going to show you, this is ready to go over to my machine now, and as your quilt grows, you do have to manage it so that you can work with it. And what I like to do is fold this up in half and leave enough that I can see what I'm doing here, because this is the edge that I want to sew. I'm going to leave enough so I can see what I'm doing, and I'm going to fold this again. And then I will accordion fold this so that it's easier for me to manage when I get over there. So I'm going to lift this up and accordion fold my quilt. I'm ready to take this over to my machine. I'm ready to start sewing on this edge, and the quilt will be in my lap. And as I sew, this is going to come out of my lap nice and smoothly, and it's going to be easy for you to manage. And then the last final step is after I have this sewn together and I press open my seam, I'm going to get a square ruler, and then I'm going to cut the rest of this off so that it's going to match.